Hi, it's Tarrant.
And Stella from Meeple University.
Today we'll be teaching you how to play the new 2021 edition of Galaxy Trucker, coming up. Let's learn to play Galaxy Trucker, game by Vlada Fatil and published by Czech Games Edition.
And if you find value from this video later, please hit the like button, subscribe to us, hit the bell and leave your feedback in the comments for others to find. For now, let's get to the table.
In Galaxy Trucker, 2 to 4 players play the role of spacefaring delivery companies attempting to make the most profit they can out in open space. Players will first work in real time to build up the best spaceships they can, and will then make their journeys through space, competing against the elements and each other to try to get as much cargo as possible to make the biggest profit. Galaxy Trucker can be played in several different ways, either as a single voyage with small, medium, or large ships, or in the transgalactic trek, where you'll do one voyage with each of the 3 types of ships. The rules governing each individual voyage are the same for all of these different modes, and so we'll take you through those first. First talking about how to build up your ship, and then how to race them through space. To set up for shipbuilding, each player takes a shipboard set to the same side, and a starting cabin in their colour which is placed on the starting space. Also keep your coloured rocket pieces handy. In the centre of the table, accessible to all players, place all of these ship tiles in a face-down pile. Set the matching adventure board in the centre of the table, and then separately shuffle the level 1, 2 and 3 adventure cards. Then deal out 4 piles composed as shown here in the centre of the board. So for this easiest version, you'll deal 4 piles each containing 2 level 1 cards. Then, once all players are ready to start, flip the hourglass onto the starting space, and the game has begun. Once the game has commenced, players will race in real time to build up their ships, mostly by taking tiles from the centre of the table and building them onto their boards. Players can also take a break from building to learn about the adventure ahead by looking through the cards in one of these 3 lower stacks. But since the major part of this phase will be building your ship, let's have a look at the rules for that first. To build up your ship, you will, in rapid succession, be taking tiles from the central pile and then adding them to your shipboard. Each player may only use one hand to do this throughout the entire phase. When you take a tile, if it is already face down, you must return it to above your shipboard before you can flip it over and look at it. This slows down your capability to build. Once you've taken the tile, you have 3 options. You could build it onto your ship, you could place it in one of your 2 reserve slots ready to be built later, or you could return it face up to the central pile. Once you've finished with a tile, you can now grab another tile from the middle, or you can take one of your reserves if you've held one. As you build up your ships, there are some placement rules which must be followed, and there are some placement suggestions which should be followed. We'll go through the rules which must be followed first. The edge of a tile may show some connectors, and there are 3 types of connectors: single connectors, double connectors, and universal connectors. There are also sides with no connectors, which are called smooth sides. You may not join a single connector to a double connector, and you may not place a smooth edge next to any type of connector, but all other placements for connectors are legal. Here, for example, you can see a single and a double and a universal connector, all connected to universal connectors, and this would also be legal, connecting 2 double connectors together. Each piece that you place must be connected to the rest of your ship as well, so this placement here would not be legal as this piece is not connected. Some tile types also have specific rules. An engine or a double engine tile must point towards the rear of your ship, and there cannot be a tile in the 1 square in front of those engines. So these 2 are both legal, these 2 point the wrong way, and this one has another tile behind it. Cannons and double cannons must also have an empty space in front of them, so this one would not be legal, but unlike the engines, they can point in any direction. Finally, as you're placing tiles, you can move them around while you try to work out where they go, but once you've placed it and then drawn another tile, whether that be from the centre or from your reserve, the old tiles are considered welded in place and cannot be moved again. There are some other important guidelines to help you build up an effective ship. During the adventure phase, shields, double cannons, and double engines have no effect unless your ship also has one or more battery packs on it to power them. The batteries can be anywhere on the ship, but without them, these three tiles will have no effect. Life support systems, which can be either purple or brown, only have an effect if they are connected directly adjacent to one of your cabins. So one of these units which is placed away from a cabin will have no effect. Cannons can be placed in any orientation, but as you'll see later, they are most useful if they are pointing forward and on the edge of your ship. A ship with no engines which hits open space will be forced to retire from the adventure, so it's very risky building a ship with no engines. And finally, while there's nothing stopping you from having open connectors on the edge of your ship, this is more risky as you'll be more prone to damage, and we'll see this later in the video. The other thing you can do is look ahead at this journey's adventure cards by taking one of the three lower piles of cards, which nobody else is currently looking at, and having a look before returning it. This will give you some clues for what sort of ship to build, but it will slow down your building since you won't be placing tiles while you're doing this. You can look at any or all of these three lower piles if you wish, but you're not allowed to look at the pile on the top of the board. That one must stay secret. As is the case for picking up another tile, your last place tile is considered welded in place as soon as you pick up adventure cards to look at them. The shipbuilding phase is a semi-timed race among the players, which is tracked by this hourglass. When the hourglass runs out, nobody has to flip it over. Players can keep building at their own pace, but any player is allowed to flip the hourglass over to the next space on the track, as long as they don't flip it over onto the space showing the S. Once a player is satisfied with the ship they've built, then they place one of their rocket meeples onto the next open starting space around this track. A player who has done this is not allowed to make any more changes to this ship. Only a player whose rocket is already on this track may flip the hourglass over onto the S space, and this starts the final countdown for players who are still shipbuilding. Once the sand runs out on this final space, one of the players who is waiting yells stop, and all remaining players must stop building their ships and physically fight each other to get their ships onto the last spaces of the track. All players now check that their ships are legal, and any mistakes they've made must be rectified by removing tiles from the ship one at a time until the ship is legal. Oftentimes there are multiple ways to do this. Here, for example, you could remove either of these tiles to fix this faulty connector. However, it would be better to remove this tile because removing this one would cause these three to also float away. Any tiles that are removed during this are placed in the top right corner of your board alongside any reserve tiles that you didn't end up using. These will all end up being worth -1 credit at the end of the game, and so it's not good to gather a big collection here. Then in first to last order on the flight track, it's time to gain your resources for the journey. For each battery tile, you will place 2 or 3 battery tokens, and each cabin tile, including your starting cabin, receives 2 astronaut tokens. The exception is a cabin which is connected to one or more alien life support pods. Here the player may choose between placing 2 human astronauts or 1 alien of a matching colour to one of the life support pods. However, you may never place alien crew in your starting cabin. Only human crew can go there. Once all players are resourced up, it's time for the flight. To set up the flight, gather up all of the 4 decks of adventure cards and then shuffle them into one deck. making sure that a card from the difficulty that you're playing is on top of the deck. One at a time, you'll flip these cards over and resolve them, sometimes resulting in gaining cargo and sometimes resulting in damage to your ships, and you'll continue doing this until all of the cards are done. Players will then add up any credits that they've gained during the flight to any that they gain at the end of the flight, and whoever has the most credits wins. Many of the effects on the cards will be resolved either in flight order or reverse flight order. This track is simply an endless loop, so only your relative position compared with the other players matters. Positions on the track will change during the flight anywhere that you see a triangle icon. This, for example, would result in a player moving backwards 2 flight days on the flight track. And when doing this, you skip over any spaces containing another player. So if green were to have this effect, green would move backwards 2 spaces, like so. With this general rule understood, let's have a look at the specific cards which you can find during the flight. Open space is an opportunity for players to use their engines to get ahead on the flight track. In turn order, players determine their engine strength, which is 1 per engine, 2 for each brown alien, and 2 for each double engine if the player spends a battery, returning it to the supply. In this case, the engine strength is 6, and the red player would move 6 spaces forward on the track. A planets card is where players will go to pick up precious cargo, which will be worth a large amount of your money at the end of the flight. In flight track order, players choose which planet they wish to go down to and take the corresponding cargo. Each planet may only be visited once, and a player may also choose not to visit a planet at all. Once all players have finished choosing their planets, in reverse flight order, players will go backwards a number of flight day steps corresponding to this card. So here green would go back first, yellow would not move, and then blue and red would step back like so. The newly gained cargo must then be placed onto cargo hold spaces on the player's ship. The most valuable but most dangerous red cargo can only be placed onto a red cargo hold, while other colours may be placed onto any cargo hold including red. Existing cargo may be freely rearranged at the point that you load new cargo, and low value cargo can even be jettisoned to make way for high value cargo. However, you must finalise the location of any cargo before drawing the next adventure card, and this is because there are cards which will cause you to lose portions of your ship, and if you lose a cargo hold, any cargo in it is gone as well. The next 2 cards, Abandoned Ship and Abandoned Station, are ways for you to use your crew in order to gain valuable credits or cargo. Like the planets, these cards favour the leader in flight order, because only one player gets to take these benefits, and it is the leader who gets the first choice to claim it. For an abandoned ship, the player must discard a number of crew, and this can be either human or alien crew, as well as go back a number of spaces on the flight track in order to gain a number of credits. Unlike cargo, these credits are safe. Nothing can happen during the flight that will make you lose them. For an abandoned station, you must have a certain number of crew, but you don't lose those crew, and go backwards a number of steps on the flight track in order to gain the cargo shown, which you place in cargo holds as you would from a planet. For both of these options, once one player has taken advantage of the benefit, or once all players have passed on it, you'll move on to the next card. The first of the more dangerous cards you might encounter is the Meteor Swarm, and here all players would simultaneously be attacked by meteors from the direction shown on the card. Here it would be 2 large meteors from the front and 2 small meteors from the rear. For each meteor on the card, roll the 2 dice. This will tell you which row or column the meteor will strike from. You'll roll for each meteor once, and all players will be subject to the same row or column. You may only protect your ship from a large meteor using a cannon which is pointed at that meteor. Here, for example, columns 5 and 7 are protected by these single cannons, and column 6 is protected by this double cannon if you choose to spend one battery to power the double cannon. The choice to spend that battery is made when that column is rolled. Column 8 is not protected because the cannon is pointing the wrong way, and column 9 has no cannons. If you fail to shoot down a large meteor, then the first part of your ship that is in that column from the direction of the meteor is destroyed. Here, this life support would fall off. Any pieces which fall off are placed into the top right corner of your board. When you lose a ship part, you lose any crew, cargo, or batteries that were on it. In this instance, you would lose this alien because you've lost the life support that supported it. And if a part of the ship became disconnected, such as if another 9 were rolled, then any parts which float off are also placed into this discard area. Small meteors are less dangerous, and they can only damage parts of your ship which have an open connector in the direction of the meteor. So here columns 7, 8 and 9 are safe from the rear, but columns 5 and 6 are vulnerable. Cannons don't work against small meteors. The only way to protect against them is with a powered up shield which is pointing in the correct direction. Powering up a shield costs 1 battery, and it protects against all small meteors coming from the 2 directions showing with the bright green field, so here from the top or from the right. As such, in this instance, if a 5 had been rolled, this shield would be unable to protect this cannon because it's pointing in the wrong direction. But if when the ship had originally been built, it had been oriented in this direction, then powering it up with a battery would protect this column from this meteor. Each meteor is protected separately, and so if 2 5s were rolled, 2 batteries would have to be spent to protect this cannon from both meteors. The purple cards provide both opportunity and risk, and they're the one type of card in the game where it may not always be best to be at the head of the flight queue. Each of these represents an enemy ship which comes attacking with a certain amount of cannon fire. Here, for example, these pirates attack with 6 cannon strength, and you would first attack the leading ship, the yellow player. Total up the cannon strength on the player's ship. This is equal to 1 for each forward-facing cannon, 2 for each forward-facing double cannon which is activated by spending a battery, half of that tally for any sideward or rearward-facing cannons, and 2 for each purple alien crew member. Here, the cannon strength would be 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7.5. If the player's cannon strength exceeds the enemy's cannon strength, then the player wins. The player may optionally go backwards a number of spaces on the flight track in order to gain the reward shown. Whether the reward is gained or not, the encounter is over, and these enemies don't attack any other players. If cannon strengths are equal, then the encounter is a draw, and the enemies go on to attack the next ship in line. If the player's cannon strength is less, then the player is defeated and suffers the penalty shown in the top right corner of the card. Here it's a large cannon fire, followed by a small cannon fire, followed by a large cannon fire, all from the front. Like meteors, you'll roll dice to see which column you're attacked in. However, your defences against cannon fire are much weaker than your defences against meteors. A hit by large cannon fire cannot be blocked. You automatically lose the tile which was hit. A hit with small cannon fire can be defended by powering up a shield which is pointing in the correct direction, but if not, it would destroy the piece it hit even if it hits on a smooth edge. In the case of slavers, the penalty is to lose crew from your ship, either humans or aliens. After suffering the penalty, the enemy then attacks the next ship in line and continues doing so until either it has defeated or drawn with all players or been defeated by one. The next type of card is Combat Zone, and here you are directly compared against your opponents in order to work out who suffers a penalty. You will resolve each row on the Combat Zone card to its completion from top to bottom. In this top row, for example, players will compare cannon strength, and whoever has the lowest cannon strength will lose 4 flight days, that is, go 4 steps backwards on the flight track. players will declare their cannon strength in flight order from front to back, meaning that the player who is leading has to decide first whether or not to spend batteries to add double cannons. In the event of a tie, it's the player at the front of the queue who suffers the penalty. In this middle row, the player with the least engine strength would lose 3 cargo, and in this bottom row, the player with the fewest crew would be attacked by cannon fire as shown here. If a player losing cargo runs out of cargo, then the player starts losing batteries, and if the player also runs out of batteries, any other losses are ignored. As mentioned before, purple aliens will help increase your cannon strength, and brown aliens will help increase your engine strength. However, you should think of these aliens as experts in using that type of equipment on your ship. A purple alien on a ship with no cannons adds no cannon strength, and a brown alien on a ship with no engines adds no engine strength. The last remaining cards are the yellow event cards. For an epidemic, out of each cabin which contains at least one crew member and is connected to another cabin containing at least one crew member, each of those cabins loses one crew member to disease. These two are next to an unoccupied cabin and are safe. Stardust clogs up any of your exposed connectors on your ship. Each player counts up the total number of exposed connectors, and then in reverse flight track order moves backwards that many spaces around the track. Finally, sabotage affects only the ship with the smallest crew, and furthest ahead in flight order in the event of a tie. This will randomly destroy one component from your ship. Roll the 2 dice to determine the column, and then roll the 2 dice to determine the row, destroying that component as well as anything that hangs off it. If you roll a miss, try again, and after 3 sets of coordinates, if you've missed every time, then the saboteurs fail. The flight continues in this way until all of the adventure cards in the deck have been drawn and resolved, but there are some ways that players may not finish the entire deck and be eliminated before that happens. If a ship ever loses its last human crew member, even if there are aliens still on board, then it is eliminated. If a ship has no engine strength when an open space card is drawn, like here for example having no batteries to power the only double engine, then that ship drifts away in space and is eliminated. And if a ship is ever lapped and can't unlap itself by the end of the card that's currently being resolved, then the lapped ship is eliminated. A player may also choose to optionally eliminate themselves from the round after a card has been fully resolved. This might be the safest course of action if you've lost a lot of your key components. If at any point so many players have been eliminated that only one player remains, then you will ignore any of the comparison cards should they come up, that is the combat zones or sabotage. Once all of the cards are done or all of the players are eliminated, it's time to tally up the final scores. Players who weren't eliminated gain points based on their final position in the flight order. So on the level 2 board, for example, the leading red player would gain 8 credits. Players will then determine the award for the best looking ship out of all the ships that were not eliminated. And to do this, count up all of your exposed connectors, and the player or players with the fewest exposed connectors gain the reward. Now sell all of your cargo at the price shown on the central board. So here 14 for all of that cargo. An eliminated player does get to sell cargo, but only gains half of the money rounded up. Finally, count up all of the pieces that you've lost through the flight in your top right corner box and lose 1 credit for each. So here a loss of 5 credits. The player or players with the most credits wins. The full game of Galaxy Trucker plays over 3 rounds, with first a level 1 ship, then level 2, then level 3, and the player with the most credits at the end of all 3 is the winner. The only difference in rules between the single voyage and the transgalactic trek is the use of titles instead of the best looking ship award. To start level 1, you'll pick a number of title tiles equal to the number of players and place them on the silver side. Here, for example, you've got most components which run on batteries, longest corridor in the ship, most crew cabin spaces which have a view of space, and most cargo holds with at least one cargo. The winner or winners of each title receive 2 credits at the end of level 1. The titles are then distributed among the players for level 2. Each player starts level 2 with 1 title, so if you won a title in level 1, you keep it, and if you won more than 1 title, then you give the title of your choice to one of the players who doesn't have one. When setting up for level 2, you'll discard the adventure cards that you used in level 1 and draw only from the deck that remains. Then complete the level according to the normal rules. At the end of level 2, instead of any common titles, your aim is to defend the title that you had at the start of level 2. If you defend the title outright or in a tie, then you gain 4 credits and flip it over to its gold side. If you fail, you keep it on its silver side, but nobody gains any money. In level 3, you'll once again be trying to defend your title, and if you defend a silver title in level 3, then you'll gain 6 credits. If you have a gold title, then that title will now have an additional handicap which makes it harder for you to defend, but if you're successful, you'll gain 12 credits instead of 6. These are added to all of the other credits that you may gain during the trek, and the player with the highest overall credits wins the game. And that's how to play Galaxy Trucker. We hope you enjoyed this video.
And if you enjoyed this video, please help us by hitting the like button. Subscribe to us. You can also hit the meeple in the corner to do that, and hit the bell icon so you'll be one of the first to know when we have new and exciting videos. You can also follow me on Instagram for my board games journey.
And if you have any questions, comments or feedback, please leave them in the comment section below.
See you next time.